like sharks and Dublin shamrocks. It's Miss Emke again, and welcome to this week's social emotional learning lesson. This week we're going to talk about empathy. Do you know what empathy means? The definition of empathy is to understand and share how someone else is feeling. For example, if your friend lost their favorite toy, what would it feel like if that happened to you? Do you know how I like to remember what empathy means? Have you ever heard the expression to put yourself in someone else's shoes?
Gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. I feel it. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. I feel it.
So this week we're going to read a book all about empathy. It's called Stand in My Shoes by Bob Sorensen, illustrated by Shelley Joannes. Emily, this is the 4th time you've barged into my room. I am trying to study for a big test. I just want to talk to you, Emily whined. Alicia closed her book and said, "Can't you have a little empathy?" Emily had no idea what her big sister meant. What's empathy? Empathy is when you understand how someone is feeling because you imagine what it's like to be them or stand in their shoes. People are grateful when you notice how they feel. I'm worried about my test, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd scram so I can study. Emily was grumpy as she left her sister's room, but she thought about Alicia's words. Would people really appreciate if she noticed how they felt? The next morning, Emily went to the kitchen for breakfast. Her dad was making coffee and had spilled some coffee grounds. He didn't look very happy. "Dad, are you in a hurry?" she asked. "Yes, sweetie, I have a big presentation at work, and I need to get going." Emily found a wet dish rag. "You look tired, Dad. How about if I clean up your coffee while you get your other stuff together? Would that help?" For a moment, Emily's dad just looked at her. Then he hugged her. "You are the best, Em," he said as he grabbed his coat and hurried out the back door. It was drizzling outside as Emily waited for the school bus. As it pulled up, one of the older kids accidentally knocked into a little girl as she was getting onto the bus. Rosie lost her balance and sat down hard on the wet cement. "Hey!" yelled Emily. "Watch out for the little kids." Then Emily turned to the little girl. "Well, that's a yucky way to start the day." "I'm okay," Rosie replied, but she struggled with her heavy backpack. Emily took Rosie's hand and pulled her up, then helped her onto the bus. In class, Mrs. Fitch was not her usual laughing self. After the morning writing lesson, Mrs. Fitch went back to her desk instead of walking around the classroom like she usually did. Emily noticed that her teacher's eyes were red and that she wiped her nose on a tissue. "Mrs. Fitch, is there something wrong?" "My little dog, Buster, died last night," she said quietly. "He was very sick. We were hoping he'd get better, but he didn't." "Oh no," said Emily. "I'm not sure how you feel, but it has to hurt." "It does. Thank you for asking." In the cafeteria, she noticed Mrs. Waddles struggling to lift a tray of steamed vegetables into its place on the serving line. "That sure looks heavy," Emily said. "It is," Mrs. Waddles said. "I get a workout every day when I serve lunch." "That's quite a load of stuff," Emily said to Mr. Redmond as he pushed the cart down the hallway. "I just hope I don't run somebody over." Emily decided to walk in front of the cart, yelling in a loud, clear voice, "Coming through! Art cart coming through!" "Get out of my way," Tommy said as he pushed Samantha, Emily's friend, out of the line. "It's my turn." Tommy did this a lot at recess. "Tommy, how would you like it if I pushed you out of line when you were waiting for your turn?" "Probably not good," Tommy replied. "I love the tire swing." Samantha loves it as much as you do, so don't push her and try to take cuts, okay? Sorry, mumbled Tommy as he walked to the end of the line. After school, Mr. Peterson said, "Hello, Emily. I hope you had a wonderful day." She stopped and looked at him. "I did have a wonderful day, but Mr. Peterson, every day you say something nice to me. You never forget." As she walked to her seat, Emily could hear Mr. Peterson greet every child as they got on the bus. She sat down next to Samantha. When the seats were almost full, Rosie rushed onto the bus, out of breath. "Oh no, there isn't a place for me." Emily nudged Samantha and then asked her to slide over. "Rosie, you can sit with us." "I can? Thanks." When Emily got home, her mom asked, "How was your day, Em? You look deep in thought." "I'm fine, but I was wondering about something." "What's that?" "You always seem to notice how I'm feeling." "Part of being a mom." "But how about you? Who notices how you are feeling?" asked Emily. "Wow, Em," said her mom. "That's a very thoughtful question. I guess the answer is Aunt Carla and my friends Nancy and Shauna, and mostly your dad. Sometimes Alicia, and now you. Why do you ask?" "Just wondering," said Emily. "I'm starving. Is there anything good for a snack? Let's make something together." It was almost bedtime. Emily could see Alicia studying in her room. Instead of barging in, Emily knocked at the door. "Can I come in, or are you busy?" "You look like you want to talk," said Alicia. "Come on in." "I've been noticing how people feel," Emily said. "You know, that empathy stuff." "So what happened? What did you learn?" "People really like it when you recognize how they feel. Just noticing seems to touch their hearts." "You got it, Em." "But there's something more. When I care enough to notice how others feel, something changes inside of me," Emily explained. "It sounds like you enjoy that feeling." "Yes, I do," replied Emily. "Good. Now get out of here so I can study." In our book, Emily took an entire day to notice how people around her were feeling. She looked at her teachers, her classmates, and even her parents. But understanding how other people are feeling is not always easy. It's hard to know what another person is feeling without being them. So that's when you might have to do some detective work. You can look at things like body language, their facial expressions, tone of voice, or just how they're responding to other people. In this part of the story, Emily noticed her teacher looked sad because her eyes were red and she was wiping her nose. Those are all signs that a person might be crying. Emily also told her teacher that she's not sure how she is feeling, probably because she had never lost a pet. But Emily used some detective work and determined that it would be a very sad thing to happen and was able to show empathy towards her teacher, even though she didn't relate. Now I want you to do some detective work. Look at my body language and facial expressions and try and guess how I'm feeling. If you guessed mad, angry, bored, irritated, or annoyed, you would be right. Look at my body language and how my arms are crossed. That's not very welcoming. If you guessed nervous, scared, anxious, or uneasy, you'd be right. When people bite their nails, it's usually a sign of nervousness, and not being able to hold still and fidgeting means they might be anxious about something. If you guessed surprised or shocked, you'd be right. Looking at my facial expressions, my eyes are really wide, and my body language is showing I have very high energy. Think about how your face looks when somebody does something that's surprising or exciting. If you guessed sad, upset, or shy, you might be right. Putting your head down usually indicates you're sad, and covering your face shows you don't really want to talk to anyone. Sometimes it's easier to know what people are feeling when you know them well. For example, sometimes when people do things that are not ordinary, like when Emily noticed that her teacher didn't walk around the classroom like she normally does, but she went and sat at her desk, that was the first sign that maybe something was off that day. For example, I've known my best friend for a very long time, and I know when she's really worried or scared of something, she puts her hair over her face like this. If you didn't know her that well, you probably wouldn't understand what that meant, but I do. So this week, we reviewed what empathy is, understanding and sharing in what other people are feeling. Or the easier way to remember, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. So I will see you next week, students, and have a good one.